at least I learned a way it doesn't work. I just learned another way that it doesn't work because I have two YouTube accounts. I have a personal account and then I have a business account. But I've been intermingling those, those social media accounts, and it is detracting from the number of subscribers that we have on both accounts. So SoundBroker's got like 480 and Jan Landy's got about 115 and who knows I've got 5,000 on Facebook and who knows how much I got on Instagram, all that stuff. But anyway, we are getting a lot of views, so thank you everybody out there for watching. And hey, would it hurt a little bit just to give us a thumbs up? Good God. Good God, man. Good God. Okay. Anyway, welcome to Thinking Out Loud with Friends. Remember, everything you hear today is an opinion. That was my opinion, by the way. And do your own research. So go over to SoundBroker on Facebook and YouTube and wherever you want to go, and do your own research. Thumbs up. Okay. Anyway, so today I got a call. I told you about the call about the stage. And now the next call comes in, and the guy says to me, "Hey, I have got a Shoko rig. I've got
Wow.
100 boxes of Shoko." I said, "Really? Shoko?" And now, if you for those people who are listening, Shoko went out of business about, I don't know, 30 years ago. It was one of the first acquirers of Clare Brothers. And if you don't know what that is, do your own research. All right. Anyway, so Shoko's been gone for a long, 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 long time. Anyway, so he's got 100 boxes of the Shoko wedges, and he says, "I got a letter from Bob Plant." Bob Plant? Who's Bob Plant? And he says, Led Zeppelin. And he remembers using these speakers. So I said, "Well, what kind of condition are they in?" He said, "Well, it's just the wooden boxes. All the drivers are taken out." I said, "Well, that's good for the trash heap, man. You might have, where you been keeping this?" He says, "They've been in a barn for 50 years."
50
So
Shoko
I,
bucks.
so I am saying to myself, all right. So what do you think you want for them? He says, "I think I can get 250,000 for it."
Speakers without the drivers? They should
Yeah.
just light them on fire and cook hot
He's,
dogs
he's,
on them.
he's basically
That's what
talking
I
about a
said.
lumber
That's exactly
pile.
what I said.
A lumber pile.
250,000. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
my.
That's funny. The carpeted one, right?
I don't know. I didn't get that far with him, but it's like I'm trying to get off the phone with him gracefully. I'm just trying to get off, gracefully because I realize that he doesn't have a clue on what he's doing. Not a clue. To think that, I mean, I remember when I worked for A1, uh, and we were purchased by PRG, and we had these VIP bins, and they did have drivers in it, but PRG didn't want them, and we couldn't sell them to save our lives. What we had to do was had to pull out the mechanics of it, the drivers, the processing, and sell that separately and burn the boxes. That's what we had to do. Or put them in a trash bin. So
Now you can't
you
even
speak of
do
it.
that legally because of
I
the.
said to the guy, "Yeah, you can't. You can't fuck up the environment." And I said to the guy, I said, "Hey, this technology went out the window about 50 years ago when you bought them." So I wish him a lot of luck. And he
Yeah.
too, if Marcel is listening, I want to let you know, buddy, I gave him your phone number. So there you go. Ah, ah, retirement, semi-retirement, whatever. So I have a really important question for you, Denny, and that is, your name is spelled Denis. Do you pronounce the S, or is the S
No,
silent?
no, the S is silent. Yes, that's right. So
And it,
think of it, you know the Denny restaurants, Denny's? Like, how do you
yes,
pronounce it without the S?
It's Denny's. That's
I
it.
know, but I
It's
know, but
Denny's because, but it's
pronounce it.
apostrophe S.
Yeah. Okay. You know,
You know them.
okay, okay. But anyway, the thing is it's Denis, it's French, and Denis, the S is silent. So if you were to say Denise, well, you know women that have the name Denise, there's Z. There's no Z in my name. That's it. It's Denis.
That's
If
it.
we
It's
had
all in
two
your
N's, it would be
personality.
Dennis, right?
Sorry, beg your pardon?
Two N's would be Dennis.
That's right. But I only have one N.
Right,
So
right.
What's
That's
interesting
right.
is a really here in Tampa Bay, uh, there is a local meteorologist, and his name is Denis, and he pronounces it Dennis. His name's Dennis Phillips. You could look him up online. So I think it's just it's
yeah, yeah,
language differences.
yeah. You know what? If people call me Dennis, they can call me
Yeah,
Dennis all they want. I'm not going to argue about it. But, you know, my name is Denis. So, I mean,
right.
like sometimes I make a point of it. And an easy way for me, people to get is I just point to my knee. I just say, there. That's how you pronounce my name, you know?
Yeah, you're sitting in your den and with your knee,
Yeah.
Denny, and that's it.
So,
That's it. And Wayne, we call you Denny too. Wayne, wait, no.
I mean, listen, you are aware that there's a lot of, like, for example, Butte, Montana. Like, where does that name come from? That name's from French Canadian uh, uh, people who traveled across Canada, North America, and gave them names. And that name is Butte, Montana.
Geez, and
But
I
And
thought
I
it was
always
because
thought
they
it
had
was
a lot of
called butt.
buttes.
yeah,
I thought it was called butt Montana,
yeah, yeah.
but,
I know, but I
what am
could
I
go
doing
down.
here?
I could go through a whole bunch of American names that are basically French names that have been anglicized. And if I'm not going to argue about the fact that it's called Butte, Montana. I mean, I've known it as Butte, Montana all my life. But I mean, it was originally a Canadian, whatever you
Right.
want to call them, that traveled across America and that named it Butte. And, for English speaking names, you look at it and it's Butte. Okay, so it's Butte. We don't, I'm not going to argue about that. I mean, it is what it is. But I know that the name, and same thing, there's a whole bunch of names like that have been anglicized and they are what they are now,
A lot of Native American names on the west and on the east.
Yeah.
I always crack up because there's a lot of there's very similar names on the East Coast and the West Coast. They're spelled the same, but they're said different.
Mhm.
Which is kind of funny. I always cracked me up when I first moved out here because I would drive around and say things, and people would say, "That's not how you say it." And I'm like, "Oh, well, it is if
I
you're from
mean,
the
yeah.
East."
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if
I mean,
y'all are from the South,
Yeah,
y'all
it's kind
just
of funny.
all of y'all don't talk right.
All y'all.
and it's even like in Louisiana. I mean, where there's a lot of Acadians, Acadiens. They come from a particular region of Canada, which I don't recall historically what happened, but a lot of them moved from Eastern Canada, like the region of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and they moved down. And it's really funny because if you listen to the people who live in that part of Canada, they sound like the people that are um, in.
Did they sound Cajun?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
we had. Remember, I've talked about this before when we played in Chicoutimi.
Yeah,
Okay, I've mentioned that before on the thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, we had the guy who's in charge of our power. He worked for C Factor, a lighting company. That
Oh, I
I
know, I
think
know.
they're
C
still.
Factor. C
Yeah.
Factor was Rush's company for decades.
Oh
Long
yeah,
time, long
yeah.
Yeah,
time.
Bob C. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
know. Yeah, great guy. But at any rate, this guy was Cajun, and he was I told the story about the electrician, several shows ago. Well, he was trying to talk to this guy in Cajun French, and this guy from Chicoutimi knew he was speaking French, but he couldn't tell what the hell he was talking about.
The twist is really, really funny because the problem is the Chicoutimi people are very, very French. Matter of fact, like the most separatist Canadians live in that area. I mean, they don't want to separate because of the right left Trump issue. They want to separate because they're francophones and they actually don't want to know anything about becoming anglophones. Like they want to remain francophone and they're worried about being, basically ran over by the English language. They're not interested in speaking English. Now,
Wow.
you know, things have moved because I mean it's just a fact of life. If you don't speak English in North America, it's an issue. But that's
It
the
sure
reason
is.
why. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, they're fighting this. They are fighting this. They're separatists, but they're Quebec separatists. So it's not
Right,
the same thing as a Canadian separatist.
right.
Hey, before we go on, can I do something here?
Yeah.
Of
Um,
course.
I I set Gregory wrong. I said something wrong about Gregory was saying something about a Rupert Neve product, and he was right. I wanted to send you an email about this, Gregory. When you said that the MBT was both red and blue,
Right, right.
um, you
Low
were
and high.
right. You were
Yeah,
right. I thought it was the MBP, and
right,
it's one or the other, but you
right.
were right. The MBT,
That's the main difference.
yes, it's both. It could do the blue and the red.
Right.
And so I want to apologize to you
Oh,
because
no, no.
hey, listen, I argue with you and I said, no, 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 I'm right. And you know what? I looked it up and I felt like shit all week. Sorry about the language. I felt
Well, I
bad all
looked it
week.
up
Felt like
too
shit
afterwards.
just because of that. Unbelievable. I
Yeah,
didn't even
well,
think about it.
my conscience is the way it is. I'm sorry.
Well, I looked it
Well,
up there
very, very good.
afterwards, Denny, and I'd say, hey, maybe I got it wrong, and then I looked at it, I said, no, I'm right. Oh, well, don't matter, you know.
I know, but I got to make amends. That's just the way
Yeah,
I am. I'm sorry.
yeah.
So do you
Well,
Well,
pronounce
cool.
speaking of making amends, I would be remiss if I didn't say this today, and that is R.I.P. Rick Davies, who
Right.
co-founded Supertramp. I mean, they were an
Yeah.
amazing band,
Yeah.
and he passed away at 81, a nice long life. So,
Oh, I
I've been
still
listening
listen
to
to
him.
him.
I listened to them today.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I'd be happy. I'd be really happy to hear Jan's perspective of what happened from them being like they owned their PA. I mean, one of
Right.
the rare bands that and that PA to me, I mean, it's still my like. I don't think nothing ever sounded like that PA, and
It was the best sounding, I mean, I
Yeah, but
tell
does
you.
Delicate doesn't have those boxes anymore, do they?
no, no, no. I mean, you
Yeah, I
can't
didn't.
try
I
to
wouldn't.
find try to find those boxes. I think there's like single stacks available in England where
oh, were they
they
Turbo Sound
no,
No,
no, no,
Martin.
no.
I don't know what they
or
were.
Martins? Okay.
Filler shave.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
filler
they have
shaves
filler
and the
shades for
split
low
15.
mids,
Yeah,
and they were the first people to have the 2x15 W bends.
yeah. Well,
That
actually,
PA was
yeah,
basically tuned for
yeah,
them. I
yeah.
think. I really do.
Wow.
Before it became the split 15, though,
Right,
it was a single 15, and then they
right,
built one that was one on top of the other. But I
right.
mean, those things were so huge. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, truck wise and stacking them. So that's when they went from 215s to 215s. And that box, which is the
Mhm.
first time they entered America, was with Supertramp, and
Right,
it was with a four double 15s per side,
right,
four filler shaves per side. And they actually did the forum with because the first tour they weren't touring arenas. And so that's when but when they entered the forum, which
Freedom.
is, I mean, an
It was
iconic venue. It was an 8 double 15s aside, 8 filler shaves aside.
I
And
saw him at the Greek Theater here in LA just before they disbanded, I guess you might say.
how did
And
that sound? How did that sound?
The Greek is beautiful. Anything in there is wonderful. It's
Yeah.
outside and it's not too big and it's
that's
just
all acoustics. Yeah,
now it is acoustics, yeah. And
yeah.
I'll tell you, I went to a couple of concerts last summer at Hollywood Bowl too, and that system in there just sounds absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
The
It's
one
just
thing I will say
amazing.
about both of those venues, Bruce, that you meant, that their SPL level has to be kept below 90, I believe,
Yes, it does because of
at
the
100 feet
houses.
metered. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's like these people who buy a house, they get a great deal on the house at the end of the goddamn runway, and then they sue the city because there's planes flying over and they want insulated windows and more insulation in their house. It's like, hey, asshole, you bought the house because it was a super sale because it was at the end of the runway, and now you're blaming the city for the noise. It's like, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ,
Yeah.
it's like if you don't want to hear concerts, don't buy your house at the back of the Hollywood Bowl up on the hill. You can see the damn houses when you're sitting in the seats. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
wow.
they did that here in Las Vegas on Nellis Air Force Base. Now
Did
Nellis
they?
Air Force Base has been here forever, and
Yeah.
they built the community around it, and now people are suing them for noise abatement
Yeah,
over
for
there.
the
It's
airplanes, right?
crazy.
It's like
Yeah.
so
Well,
dumb. Oh man, they shouldn't.
but
But
We
I'll tell you something. I'll tell you a story. When I was younger, I dated this girl that lived in San Diego. And if you've ever been to San Diego and you see the airport, they fly right over the tips of the houses to go into the airport.
in between
Well,
the buildings of the city.
that's right, right? Well,
contact.
I met this woman at a bar and she invited me back to her house and I'm sitting in her house and I go up, she said, let's go up to the bedroom. So we go up to the bedroom and she's got this huge skylight. And as I'm laying on the bed, I hear this roar coming up, and then I see wheels of a jet, like I mean maybe 5 feet above my head, going through this window, and the house is rumbling, and I'm saying, "What the hell?" And she says, "Don't you like my view?" I said, "I got to get out of here."
I thought you were going to give us a story about how the
Ah.
happy moment happened when there was a landing and you thought that you were causing the
Yeah,
roar.
the happy. No, I could. I was too nervous to have a happy moment there.
So my daughter used to work in one of those tall buildings in San Diego, and she used to tell me, and I don't know if this is true or not, but she says, "Yeah, it's really cool. I wave to the pilots in Southwest when they're coming in, and they wave back."
Oh my God, that's
I was
horrible.
like, "Oh my God,
You
it's
know.
so close." Yeah, because the airport is so low, and the city goes up the hill right there, so all the
Yep, that's
buildings
right.
are
That's
like
right. Yeah.
sticking way up, and the planes come right down between the damn buildings. It's just crazy.
Yep,
Um,
they've been doing that for a long time.
Long time, yeah.
just going back to the conversation earlier, I'm wondering if Jan has something to the story about how Supertramp's PA became Delicate Sound.
No, I don't know anything about it,
It,
but I know Smoother,
it's the same, Diddy. It's the
and
same
Spy.
way the Who's PA became ML Productions.
Okay.
Okay, management said, okay, the band saying, they were looking at the cost that it's taken to go to move around like that because in that era, in the early '80s, large bands owned their own PA. Okay, Iron Maiden owned their own turbosound ring for years, and or they long-term leased and they stored it and they maintained it, and Metallica is doing that now.
Yeah, they are.
Metallica
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
owns
Yeah. Yeah.
all of that Meyer stuff. They own it all,
Yeah.
and they have a warehouse very close to Lidditz now, and outside of Philadelphia, which is rural outside Philadelphia, which is close to Lidditz, and that's where they, uh, you know, they
That's where
get
they
a
store
lot
their
of
gear.
And is that
But
is
they
that
rent
due
they're
to
very generous. Metallica is very generous
yeah,
with their
yeah,
gear. They
yeah,
rent it
yeah,
out a lot. I mean, when that
yeah,
had that fire,
yeah.
they lent them their gear. You know, another company like that was Electrotech, Ricky Farr and Rod Stewart. That's how
Yeah.
they
Right.
built up. I don't know if that's happening today, though. I don't think that
No,
that's happening
Metallica's
today.
hardly. Metallica's the only one I know of that owns their own gear now. Well, there's Ultrasound in the Dead as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
But
know.
Well, look at
isn't
Garth
that
Brooks.
yeah,
Look at Garth Brooks, right?
yeah,
I just got John McBride and
yeah,
Garth Brooks. He started out that way. Ken Porter started out that way as well. But he didn't have, I don't know if any major acts broke out when
Yeah.
he comes in, we could ask him.
yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
those days are gone. I think those days are gone. I
Well,
think everything has changed.
well, I think, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I guess because Metallica being who they are, I mean, Metallica must have, I mean, is it Dan Brown still, who's their production manager? Must have
Uh,
been there with them forever.
yeah.
And anyway, I think what happens is he's intelligent enough to go to management and say, hey, listen, we're going to do this many dates. There's going to be this much money to be made. Instead of giving it away, why don't we own the rig? And then we
Yeah.
can do, I mean, the chances of them ever needing more boxes is pretty much zero. And I think that by the time that they're done with the boxes, they could probably buy the next rig
Right.
and help pay for their next rig because I mean, well, it's the Panthers are going to be around for a while. I don't think the Panthers are going to be going away anytime soon. So I
Well,
think
I
that
mean,
that's a worthy investment.
it's the same philosophy that Iron Maiden did with Turbosound. You know,
They
because
bought the flashlight, right?
no,
Yeah.
they started out with TMS twos and
Threes.
TMS threes and
Okay, okay.
TMS
But I
fours.
want to say
Then
something.
they
I want to
moved.
say something about Metallica. See, Metallica is the opposite of Electric Tech or John McBride or all those, because Thunder Audio, Tony over at Thunder Audio, that was his biggest client,
Right.
Metallica. And they decided to buy the boxes directly from Meyer, I
Right.
believe.
Yeah, they did.
Now do your own research,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And
yeah, yeah.
so they basically cut Tony out. So it does go both ways, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Well, I mean, the fact that they were able to buy directly, I mean, first of all, to buy that many boxes, I could see why, they don't need to go through a seller to be able to buy that many boxes. I think Mayor would have been stupid to say, oh, sorry, we want you to go to one of our dealers. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I think, Jen, you're going to be all right with that.
No, I would say to you, like, hey, they should be compensated a little bit. Maybe not
Okay,
all, but
okay,
hey,
okay.
you got a dealer. Look, we're going to go direct now. We're going to take your client and sell them direct. Now, this happens all the time. This is not something. This is not something that's unique to Meyer. I mean, Harman does it. I mean, you get it. Okay, I'll give you an example. If you're doing an outdoor arena, I mean, let's say you get a contract to do into a stadium. You know, that's going to be direct to the manufacturer or a government direct to the direct from the manufacturer. So there are a lot of cases. International sales, for example, a country wants to buy some domestic product. You're not going to go through a middleman if you could help it. Why would you?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
So
yeah,
I
and
understand
that's a
that,
business
but what I
decision
don't
on.
like
Yeah. Go ahead.
what I don't like is when a manufacturer says to you, I want to know who you're selling this to. Before you could sell this, I need, like, Avid did this. They wanted a list when towards the end, before they canceled all their dealers, they wanted to know who was buying the S6Ls from me. They wanted to know. You have to register your clients. And now they've got that information. So at any time, they could always go around you and say, hey, you don't need Landy anymore. We can deal with this directly, and you'll get better service, and you'll get discounted prices because we'll cut out the middleman. But they won't get better service. And that's the fact. Nobody gets better service than what we provide them. But the reality
Well,
is
where you,
but it's a good.
like, I know, like, for example, I see on your site all the stuff that's, advertised, like the mayor, like, how do you provide better service?
Well, because what happens is this. When you have it's just the same. Look at it like this. If you have a bank account where you have, let's just say, $1,000, right? And you walk into the bank, you have to open the bank door yourself to get in, and you're lucky if you speak to anybody. But if you got millions, you walk, when you get anywhere close to the bank manager comes out, opens the door for you. It's the same thing. When you sell a lot of gear and you have a lot of clients, people treat you differently than if you are just an individual. It's simple.
I know, but
So,
but like you just said, you get better service. So okay, just so that, are you getting better service if you buy directly from the bank, or are you getting better service when you're going through a dealer?
well, it depends on how big the dealer is. Like, I'll give you an example. If if it's all, and by the way, it's all about the individual. It's not about, you can't just put it in a bucket and say, oh, this is the bucket, this is what you get. I'll give you an example. Okay. When Hotel California, and David was my good friend, needed something, they decided to go with Claire because Claire had it in his inventory, right? Instead of, they bought everything else from me, and they went through Claire for some short product because I couldn't give it to them because during the COVID there was shortages and Claire had it in stock. Well, anyway, it turns out that Claire, either, I don't remember the exactly, either Claire didn't have it in stock or Claire sent them the wrong thing. And then once they got the wrong thing, Claire said, well, this so they came back to me and said, hey, man, can you help us? And that's just because they were a little player in a big C, whereas I'm a little player and in a small C, and I want to be, my idea is, if I don't offer service extra, then what do you need me for?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was not even aware that you were offering service, Jan. I'm sorry. I mean, sorry, excuse my ignorance, but I just thought you were basically the middleman in between a buyer and a seller. I'm sorry that I never even saw the service part of your deal, and I apologize for that.
Oh, don't worry about that. Nobody knows what I do. It seems, it seems like everybody has a vision of what we do. It's not his, well, but that's what your belief system. That's why you got to do your own research. That said, this is SoundBroker is not an opinion, but the reality is I am changing SoundBroker to be a classified ad section, the number one classified ad section of our industry. So, hey, you could save some money. Yeah, Bruce,
So
what's
are
up?
you officially a rep for anybody, or is it just used gear?
No, I'm rep. Well, okay. So the industry changed tremendously during COVID. What happened was is a lot of the manufacturers decided we don't need dealers anymore. Okay. I'll
Oh,
give you
really?
just a little history.
Okay.
I'll give you a little history. Like, I'll use one vendor, Avid. Avid came. I was a certified Avid dealer, right? And I was selling Avid product. I could sell you new. I could sell you used. I could sell anything I had. But we started mostly with used equipment. That's really was our niche market. And then manufacturers B stock. I was going to the manufacturers and say, hey, what do you got in inventory that you need to sell? And that's what we were doing. But during COVID, all that used inventory disappeared. B stock disappeared. There was no more B stock. There was no more A stock. There was no nothing. Anyway, so Avid made a decision that they were going to cut out all the dealers, and instead of going direct, they went through distributors. Same now. Now almost everybody goes through a distributor. So you have like major distributors, like for example, Empire in your neck of the woods. You know, if you want to buy a Yamaha, you want to buy Shure, whatever, you go through Empire because Empire is now holding it in their warehouse and distributing it. And
Right.
what happened is that Empire gets a better deal than I do, and so they give it to me at dealer cost. But what we do lose is the quick pay. So in the old days, if I was buying something and let's say the MSRP, well, forget, nobody buys MSRP. Anybody who buys MSRP is from another planet, because that's where they created MAP. And if anybody understands that, MSRP, manufacturer suggested retail price, and then MAP is manufactured advertising price. That's so
And a
all
lot of
of a
map
sudden
is
when they
dependent
came
on
up
how
with that.
much you buy, right? A lot of map
No,
is to,
map is map. Map is map. Like for
oh, I thought
example,
if you bought 10 of something, you get a better deal.
yeah, minimized advertising price. That's what MAP stands for.
Oh, okay.
So even whether you're B&H or whether you're, a Guitar Center, whatever, if a manufacturer has a MAP price on it, that's what you have to advertise it for. Now, when you walk into the store, you could make a deal with the salesman to get a lower price, but they can't advertise it in the paper for any less. So everybody has an even playing field you know so even if you go to like Sweetwater, if you know what you're doing, you can get a discount off of MAP. But that is what they did to kind of level the playing field. But once they introduce MAP, they basically cut your money out right away, because let's say MSRP, which everybody used to go with, was, let's say, $100, just for argument's sake, and then MAP was 75. You no longer could get $100 because everybody else was advertising it for 75. So you immediately lost 25 bucks right off the top, just like that. Simple as can be. Anyway, so now everybody goes through the amount of, it's like car dealers, right? Well, they'll sell it for sticker price, and then they'll give it to you for their cost. Well, what they don't give you is the incentive that the car manufacturers give them for buying bulk cars. So they might show the price that they paid as, let's just say, I'm going to pick a number out of thin air, $100,000, and that's what their invoice shows. However, at the end of the year, if they sold, let's just say, 100 cars, then they get back 10%, but they never give you that, and that's how it works.
And
I,
the complicated. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Danny.
no. I know what I want to talk about. I won't forget. So go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, when it goes to cars, so actually, car dealers rarely own their own cars, new model, because of flooring, what's called flooring. They say, well, you can have this car to put it in your showroom for 120 days. And after 120 days, you're going to have to go ahead and pay for it.
And,
Yeah.
and there's also the fact that dealers make their money on service, so on maintenance or whatever you want to call it. So, and that market is now going, if depending on what you're selling. But I wanted to go on the fact that production sells. So in other words, like I worked for a venue for the last 21 years that I was before I retired, and the profit margin on the guys who are selling products to me dropped drastically. So for example, like I know for a fact that the margin, like let's say I was buying $1 million worth of gear. Well, the dealers that are trying to sell it to me, because I would say I would, because I work for the city, a municipality, everything had to go on a tender. And I'd put together the tender, and then people bid on this tender. Well, the margin is now, like when they're able to get 1.5%, like that's it. And actually some sales, I mean, there was this monster in this business, and Jan might actually know who this guy is, but anyway, he won like so many sales in the province of Quebec, actually even in Canada, that Solotech bought him out to know how he was doing this, because he was able to undercut everybody by 0.25%. And he was
Well, he
able
was
to
just working
undercut.
for less money. That's all. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, I
when
know
I
that's
first
not, but that's
started,
not the point though. What the point though, Jan, is how did he know the margin? How, I mean, like like something was underhanded, because he knew everybody's bid, and he was always able to win by 0.25 or by 0.2 or by 0.3. I mean, how the hell does he know the margin on everybody and be able to figure out that, oh, I just need to sell it for 0.2% less, and I'm gonna win the bid. And the thing is that margin is already so low. I mean, like, to take on $1 million sale, I mean, there's a lot of work to put together the bid. And so the people are going, well, I'm not going to get involved in doing all this work for 1.2% or 1.3%, of a
You're
million
right.
dollars.
You're right, because there are people like that go out of business when they unless you have such volume. But the reality is, it's the old joke, you know. Whereas I have something that costs me, $101, but I sell it for 100. And the guy says to him, "Well, how do you stay in business?" He says, "I sell a lot of them."
Yeah.
And you're losing money. So
or you
in
get
the
bought
old
out.
days, yeah, in the old days, when I first started I was selling into Las Vegas. I learned this very early on, that the hotels, they buy so much stuff that everybody discounts the living daylights out of their profit margin to be able to sell to the hotels, so that they could use that as a marketing ploy. Well, we sell to MGM, we sell to, Bellagio, we sell to the Wynn, and they use that as a marketing ploy. But they drop their drawers to get into these hotels, because there's such a thing as operating cash, right? So most businesses that 90% of their profit comes from the little guy, and 10% of their profit comes from the big sales that they make, because you can charge the little guy more money than you can charge the big guy. And that's how it works. And that's been, throughout time. I'm sure even in Shakespeare's day, that's how they used to handle it, you know. Anyway, that's where it's at. But it's very difficult today. I know that if I had to start SoundBroker today, it might not be as successful as it is. Well, I guarantee you, I wouldn't be able to start this company today. The competition for what I have right now is so fierce, in regards to so many different companies out there that want to sell you used equipment. And every site, Claire, PRG, just to name the two biggest ones, they have their own used gear site now. But when I started, I was selling a ton of PRG stuff, a ton of it. I never got to sell much of Claire stuff. There was always some other guy that lived in Lidditz, who was a friend with Roy and Gene, who gave them, I forgot the guy's name, but they gave him all their used stuff to sell. Um, but the reality is that today, there's everybody's got a website. Everybody's got a website. There's eBay. When I started eBay was just starting as well. My biggest mistake that I made is I didn't get into selling refrigerators and toasters. That's it. I stuck with sound and lights. And but today, there's Facebook Marketplace, there's Reverb, there's so many places that you have a choice of. And now there's another guy out there. I think his company's called Gear Supply. Um,
Yeah.
and he's now partnering up with L Acoustic and Meyer and the big companies, whereas he's now their trade-in partner. Whereas I believe that L Acoustic invested in his company. I don't know for sure, but he's buying tons of their used speakers now. So if you have a K2 rig, Ken, are you familiar with this guy? Are you familiar with Mendel?
Yep.
Has he approached you? Do you know more about it than
He
I do?
he just asked if I had anything to sell, and I said no. But I think the sale is that he's got a lot of money somewhere, and I don't think it's L Acoustics. I think it's L Acoustics deal is they they give a credit. Um, I think the buy what he pays for the boxes, part of it is in a credit from L Acoustics.
Yeah, I think that's, when I was the official trading partner for Avid, when they were discontinuing the profile and introducing the S6L, they came to me and they said, "Well, we need a trading partner." And I said, I'm your guy, because that was when in the heart of the day. And basically, what they would do is they would go to a company, like Ken Porter's company, and they say, "Hey, look, you want to buy some S6Ls? We'll give you a really good price on your profile, and you send it to Jan, and then Jan will sell it for us. And they would give me a huge credit. And so that's how it worked. And I made a lot of money. And then eventually with the Avid boards, I realized there was more money in parts. So I started cannibalizing the profiles and just selling the parts. And I want to thank Avid and especially Paul Marini, who set up that deal for me. And that really that really was a great jump start for me to retirement. That's for sure.
So when you
Yeah.
say they're giving you credit, I mean, they're basically
Well, Denny, let
financing
me
it.
give you an example. They'll say, hey, Denny, you're a wonderful guy, and I'm going to give you credit for all the things that you've done because I'm impressed with you. There you go. There's an example of credit. You get the credit you deserve.
Yeah, but the
Okay.
point is too, is that it has to go tie in with the PO.
Right.
Yep, that's right. It has to go in, it has to time with appeal. But that's what they do. But right now, my thought process is speakers are different than consoles. And right now there's an abundance of PA out there, an abundance of PA. And if you think about it, every item that a manufacturer produces has planned obsolescence in it. Everything. No matter what you buy, it's planned obsolescence, right? So look, so let's Ken, you use a lot of different brands, right? So let's just pick a brand, any brand that you would like. Let's just pick, for example, oh,
Meyer,
you with the
DNB, pick
Meyer.
DNB. Oh, it's because I was going to say
well,
Say
DNB
that
because
when Kurt's not here.
In the past 20 years, do you realize how many versions of line arrays they have come out with?
Yeah.
yeah. So the Mina, the Milo, the Leopard, and now they're up to the Panther. I mean, I'm sure I'm leaving out some what was the MSL3, MSL4, the CQs, on and on and
Nita,
on. With
Melody,
Yeah,
Milo,
Melody, I forgot it. Yeah, Leo,
But
Leo.
a
and
lot of those are different sizes though. But if you're talking, a four driver assortment, the evolution over time of the four driver assortment for concerts, like I use A6s a lot, and there's A12s and there's A8s, and I had 2489s, and
what did you
the
rent from AVHQ?
well, I was the head sound guy at AVHQ. I bought all the stuff. So,
Oh, there you
I used to
go.
get $250,000 a year to spend on gear, And if I didn't spend it by a
Unbelievable.
certain date, they'd buy projectors with it. And I was
Is,
never going to let them do that.
is that all?
well,
That all they gave you to that's all you've spent on PA in a year?
I could do 250,000 a year unless I had a special purchase. Yeah.
Hey, they were still
Yeah,
using
well,
Apogee about 10 years ago,
no,
man. Nobody else had Apogee.
when I bought the 89 rig, I needed more money. So, but I didn't want the 89 rig. I wanted the 88 rig, but for corporate. But Doug told me, if you don't spend this money, it was 300 and some $1,000. He says, I'm going to go buy projectors by a certain date. So I called JBL and I says, I need 36 89s, and I need power distro and all these Crown amplifiers, and we built that rig real fast because if I didn't spend the money, they were going to spend it on something else.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at L Acoustic. It started out with VDOSC. Where
Yeah.
did it go from there?
Well, what was their
Was
next
it
big
was
box?
Cara, right? Cara?
well, the K. They went from the VDOS to the K series,
Right.
and now they're at the L series. But that's one thing. I mean,
So how,
is the
Kurt
problem?
and Ken or Kenny,
Yeah.
how long do you, when you buy, whatever your touring rig now is, I don't know what they are now, but how long do you think that's going to last? Either will it start to disintegrate, or does everybody just want the new thing? Because I know as sound wise, video wise, we'd be lucky if we could get 3 years out of video gear before everybody wanted the new projector and the new camera and the new this and the new that. But my sound rigs, I'd buy a console and I could get 5, 6, 7 years out of a console, and probably that out of a speaker system. I know my first speaker system I bought at AVHQ was I bought 36 Rankis Hines SR1s, and the last thing that I did before I left in 2000 was I had them all refinished and new processors, and they still use them to this day. They go out on rentals all the time, and for a little trap, they're not bad. It's a 15 and a 2-inch. And once they started doing that shifting crossover stuff, that just made me crazy. But
It depends on the clientele that you are targeting at.
does it?
Smaller market, and what the other question is does the manufacturer solve a problem? In other words, like in DMB, they'd come out with, they had been in the square boxes, and then they came out with the Q1 line array, which
Right.
did fairly good in that mid-market stuff. It wasn't new big stuff. And then they came out with the J series, which did pretty good. It had dipole horizontal pattern control on it. It still had the arraying there that L Acoustics and VDOS and all that stuff had.
Right.
But then as you went on, they updated the amplifier that had more DSP power in the amplifier. And at that point, they could start doing some processing as far as down the line, as far as the lobing in the 400 to 200 to 400 range.
Mm.
So people started asking for that as technology changed. And then when the KSL and the GSL came, that was more because they were dealing with the electronic. You were dealing with the shaping.
Steering?
Well, steering.
Well, we lost
You
it.
just
You
muted yourself.
muted yourself,
There you go.
Ken. Yeah.
You're dealing more with the shaping of the
The beam.
coming out of the
beam.
beam, yeah, in there, so you can do it, and then you can start opening up some and steering away from like glass walls, of
Like
room.
in arenas where they have the corporate section with those damn glass walls. Oh,
And
man.
that also you got to deal with what you're dealing with the kind of
Balconies.
the flat there, but balcony. But I was thinking like the back of the floor, so you had more to where you could drop down a little bit into the last 10 rows of the floor, and it didn't drop off as much as you had. Because a lot of times you'd walk down the lateral line race, you walk down the arena if it's a deep arena like a soccer arena, and then you kind of dropped off right before, and then as soon as you started walking up the 100 level, you came back in.
Oh, interesting.
Raising on
Because
that.
because of the depth, right, Ken? Because
Yep.
the depth on the floor, if it's much deeper, you need to reach the back of the 100, but then the balcony is coming up close, so the depth, the range is the depth of the beam is different at different tiers.
It has to do with the angle of incident too on the floor. You have all the flat floor and how it's coming in, what you're doing there.
Wow.
You have
I
that.
think that's where the expression "the angle of the dangle." I
The
think
angle
that's
of the
where that
dangle,
came
yeah.
from.
But then DMB, in that when they bring the K out, they had the kind of ray steering, ray processing. Then they brought out the lower coming down where they had more pattern control with the side firing speakers and the stuff there, which basically then it made the stage quieter.
And
Then-
the cardioid boxes.
Yep. And in the bass before they had deal with that in the bass, where you could do cardioid, you could do some of that, but they took it to the next level better and easier with the single box. You could do that multiple boxes and not just, single box and not just a bunch of boxes and one turned around and stuff like that.
DAW, like DAW you're talking about? Is that what you mean by how they can do it in one box, but they can do some vertical steering with that? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm talking about sub. I was talking about sub stuff in one box.
Oh, okay.
Three speakers in a sub, like that. But then artists started noticing that they're, particularly if they're on ears, that their stage was quieter. They could hear better in their stage and stuff like that. There still are still artists that don't like to feel the portable stage vibrating on their feet.
Well, here's the deal. Look, if I was in a position of Ken Porter, let's just say, and I owned a sound company, if I could get away with just putting out the same box that I've had forever, I would never change because
Yeah.
and in the old days, it used to be 10 times rental. Or rather, you buy something,
Right.
10
It
rentals,
did.
you
Yep.
own it, and then on and on and on.
Yep.
But what the manufacturers do, they convince the designers, they convince the sound engineers, you gotta have this. You gotta have this because this is the
That's
biggest and
that
the greatest and
Well,
blah blah blah
that's
blah blah.
why
that's
I asked Ken how long he
Yeah,
expects,
yeah,
when he
yeah.
dumps all that money into a
Okay.
concert rig, how
But
long does he
yeah,
expect it to last?
I know, but I
The
think that Ken,
the
sorry, Ken, Ken's point is
Let
very, very important
It
about
is very important, yes.
the cardioid boxes. This changed the game. I mean,
Oh, totally, totally.
uh, this is like, it could not just keep on saying, hey, my box, my box, my box. The cardioid design, I mean, for example, the Roger Water gig. I mean, Roger Water gig, that sound on the first leg of the tour, I mean, it sucked. And then when Sully, who, a lot of people think that Sully's a big complainer, I mean, he solved the issue by saying, out goes the Claire box, in goes the D&B box. And then they did the rest of the tour with that box. And that was the issue, was the cardioid issue. And so to me, like, if you didn't have a cardioid box, you couldn't resolve that issue otherwise. And I may be wrong,
well,
Ken, but maybe you could say something
So
about
you
that.
mean cardioid sub or cardioid arrangement in a large like a four-way box?
The array,
Oh,
because
the big array?
yeah, so because let's just say that the array goes down to before the sub at 80 hertz. I'm
Right,
picking
right.
a number, right?
Yeah,
The
you want to get rid
problem,
of all that stuff
like,
behind the
he
stage.
was doing a show in the center, right? So you got to imagine that the lobing, because he was doing 4 stereos. So stereo on one length of the arena, stereo on one length of the arena, stereo on one width of the arena, stereo on one width of the arena. So imagine all the lobing from
Oh
all
my
those
God.
stacks
In
was
the center?
exactly where the band was.
Yes, terrible.
So now
hey,
you got
look,
to imagine if the low mid area is from, we'll say, 300 to 80, then there's nothing that the subs are going to do. And by the way, under the subs, that's a whole different range. But I'm talking about all that low mid caca was ending up on the stage where all those microphones were. So the solution was not a box, box, box. It was a cardioid rig. And I think that DMB is leading the way when it comes to. And when I addressed Mayor about this, they said, "Oh, our design does not have rear loading." I'm not sure about that.
well, that's your
I see
opinion,
Ken
by the
smiling.
way. That's your
Yeah, yeah,
opinion,
yeah, yeah.
Denny.
No, no, you're
And
right. You're right.
and
You're
and
right. You're
one
right.
thing we all learned something. It's that confusion is called low mid caca. I want you to know because that's it. Low
And
mid
how
caca.
do you spell that
That's
with a
it.
C or a K?
It
Denny, I
depends
don't
if
know.
you're
It's
French or
French.
not. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Hey.
I'm using a term that I'm sure that Mr. Scoville would have much better technical terms. But anyway.
Well, Lomit Kaka kind of sounds, it's the way it should. I think we should patent that word right now. And anybody who uses it from now on, you have to get paid for it. There you go. But
so is there
anyway,
any
you're missing the big point here, and the big point is it's planned obsolescence. So because before they came up with cardioid boxes, before they came up, the first thing that they had, we call it conventional boxes, right? The conventional box. Then it came the line array. Now there's nothing been new well, you got the hollow plot now. That's the new thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a different technology, but it's planned obsolescence. In 10 years, the hollow plot will be replaced by something else. And that's a
there was
fact.
wait a minute. In that time, there were so many other things. You remember the planer, the one that had the thing that's like a flat wall. You had the US audio box that came out that had this that like had like a line of horn drivers in a thing, and it slid the horn. You slid the horn you wanted on it for the show like that. You had the same way with the 12s or the 10s for the low mid. It was all horn
How
loaded.
about the HLAs, Kenny? How many did
Got
you
the
have of
HLA.
that?
Oh, those things were horrible. We were having a
Um,
discussion about that the other day.
Hey, 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 it's an opinion. It's an opinion.
Listen, anything that I could stand, when I went to the demo, they had like 4 per side all stacked up. And the first thing I did is I stood in the audience and I listened to them for a couple minutes, and then I walked up on the stage to see what they sounded like behind up on the stage. And I looked at the guy and I said, this really sucks. And he said, why is that? And he says, sounds as good on the stage as it does in front of down in the audience. And that's like a really bad thing.
What blows me away about that is Albert, who, Albert was around forever and has the respect of a lot of people. Albert made the switch and, dare I say, make a mistake,
But Danny, I think, with all due respect, you're right about what you're talking technology, but you're missing the point of where I'm going, and that is planned obsolescence.
Obsolescence. Okay.
And the worst place of all is in video projection. Oh my God, I don't know how these people stay in business, because the technology in video is changing. It went from 3-beam to 1-beam to 2-beam to now it's laser, and who knows what's going to be next.
Corporate money. Corporate money.
I remember.
That's the difference.
Rock
and roll money and corporate money, two different things.
Two different animals, yes. Yeah. I remember when I used to be up against the video department, and they would spend $250,000 per projector, and we'd buy like 8 projectors, and they used to have to turn them in 2 years because the new thing would be out and nobody would want them anymore. So they would rent them out for like $4,000 a day on a 3-day week, so that we could get them paid for in less than 2 years, so we'd have money to get the new projectors with. And it used to drive me batty, because I could get so long out of my speakers and stuff like that. And even lighting is even worse. You could buy a par can and use that par can for frickin' 15 years, and the Lecos. And I used to razz on the lighting guys all the time about that. Until all that new moving light stuff came out, but
until they came up with the MX. Planned obsolescence. That's all. You're 100% correct. But look at this. They are still using those RSL boxes that you had. They're still using the Apogee boxes. And here's the deal.
I had 24 AE5s, and they're still using them.
That's right. And the reason they could use them is because they don't have a production manager saying, hey, I want the latest and the greatest. Right. They're hiring the company to put on a good production, good light, good sound, and good video. And basically, the client doesn't give a rat's ass on what you're using if they're contracting you to provide it all.
Right.
But Ken's situation, Ken Porter, he's dealing with sound engineers that are not part of the Spectrum company, right, Ken? You've got people that are designers that are coming in and saying, well, I just read, and Meyer has talked to me, and Apogee has talked to me, and L Acoustic has talked to me, and D&B has talked to me, and Martin has talked to me, and now you got to try to figure out what it is that you feel is going to make you shine with your client.
In the community of the community of engineers are using, and who's getting what out of it, and whether they want to gamble this way or whether they think they can get better sound from what someone else is using, the way you get as good or better result.
I had to deal with my clients 2 different ways. Either I was dealing with a TD who knew all the buzzwords, who wanted Apogee or Yamaha consoles or something like that, or I was dealing with the corporate, planning departments that knew nothing about anything, and all they cared about is that they could hear their speeches 150 feet back, no matter what the hell happened on the stage. So, I could put anything out there as long as it was a decent design and get away with it, unless I was dealing with a TD. If the corporates hired a TD, then they had stuff that they wanted to see, and they were looking for buzzwords,
Yeah, well, and that's why. Get Ken, and I'll tell you that's something from my history. Get Ken.
The other thing too with that is that it is part of the budget. If you don't have the budget for that, they will accept older stuff or whatever, a different thing than what's the line, if their artist can tolerate it. Like the reason I went to
But Ken, does the artist really know a lot of times?
He does.
Or do they just think they know?
But it sounds like in his head.
Yeah.
Or with the artist's wife, sitting out in front of the house, say, that didn't sound as good as this.
Right.
Well, that's always it. It's the artist's wife or girlfriend who's standing out in the audience and saying, "Hey."
You know, I used
You
to
live
tell
and die
people
by
that
that.
everybody that has a bass and treble knob in their life thinks they're a sound person, and which includes just about everybody on earth, because they all have a stereo in their living room or a radio in their car that has a bass and a treble knob. So they have an opinion
Yeah.
that they think counts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I want to go back to the fact that Mayer's development changed forever. I mean, weirdly enough, in his first Biamp studio monitors, I mean, the HD1 rang forever. I mean, it was the king
Is that
for
the
a long,
Myers
long time.
HD1?
Yeah, the Mayer
God,
Yeah,
HD1.
and it's
that
still
thing
being
was
used.
so nice. Oh my God.
It's still quite popular in recording studios. Quite popular
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
near
yeah,
field.
yeah.
I love
But
the focal stuff
yeah,
now.
yeah,
Oh man,
yeah,
the focal stuff's great.
yeah. First, I think there's a bit of a tasting about the focal stuff. I mean, weirdly enough, like the look at the Bob Clearmountain was forever on his NS10s, right?
Yes. Well,
And then
NS10s had a sound that people would put on their desks so that they could listen on that.
yeah, but
Also, you
let's
know,
remember that he's the one that found the NS10, and he's the one that brought the NS10 into what they became. I'm not sure if you know the story. He was at Power Station Studio for I don't know how long,
are you
and he
talking about
was
the
not
guy that invented the vocals? Oh,
no, no, no,
I'm
no,
trying to
no, no,
figure
no,
out.
no, no. What happened? Bob Clearmountain was a studio engineer at Power Station Studio, and
Okay.
he was not happy with mixing on the big guys. He actually walked out of the studio and started walking down the street in New York and going into shops and listening to speakers, and he found the NS10, and
Oh,
and then he brought him in his studio, and then all of a sudden, because Bob Clearmountain was like, setting the, I mean, everybody wanted Bob Clearmountain to mix their albums. He was mixing on NS10, and all of a sudden, everybody needed a pair of NS10s. But the point I was trying to make is Clearmountain eventually went to the Dynaudio BM15. And it's really weird how I saw it happen everywhere. Like Denis Savage, who mixes Celine Dion. I mean, he started with HD1, he moved to BM15As before Clearmountain. And then all of a sudden, Clearmountain was on his BM15As forever. Weirdly enough, Clearmountain studio burns down because of the LA fires, and he builds a new studio. Guess what? He's not on BM15As. He's now gone the Genelec route. And so,
and Genelecs are nice too. Wow.
Yeah,
yeah,
but Denny, didn't they used to use the NS10s to simulate what it sound like on AM radio?
yeah, but that's what most people, I mean, okay. How many people listen to at home system that sounded like big studio speakers? Zero.
Zero.
Most people didn't. So by having the NS10, that's what the average Joe sound system sounded like, you know. And so, I mean, but first of all, the NS10 changed. It was not the same boxes, I mean, at first, people were actually literally putting Kleenex over the tweeters because it was not quite right. And then Yamaha saw the market, switched the tweeter, and then all of a sudden we didn't need the Kleenex in front of the tweeters anymore. But anyway, the
Buy two,
understand.
get a box of Kleenex for free, right?
Yeah. See that? There you go.
That's
Planned
funny.
obsolescence. Planned obsolescence.
Oh, that's
And
very funny.
that's what it is. I mean, look, it's in cars, it's in toasters, it's in everything. It's
In
planned
your
obsolescence
phone.
because of the
Yeah, and the
manufacturer.
phones,
Look
and
at
Oh,
the
phones,
phones.
hey,
big time.
hey, we could talk about the new Apple thing as
Yeah.
well. I mean, I don't know, I have a 16. I saw the Apple event and I'm impressed with what they've come up with. I'm ready to switch up to the Ultra Watch, but the reality is that uh, what they've done now in technology, where they've added in the ability for your heartbeat, and which is really cool in regards to projecting. Maybe you should be careful that you don't have a stroke or a heart
Yeah.
attack. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ken Porter, what?
Is that in the phone, or is that in the earpods that
They
supposedly
have the
has a
they have
translation?
The AirPod.
AirPod
I
three.
And
mean,
the earpods supposedly have a
and the thing
translation.
is this is they were saying that Apple Apple wasn't going to introduce a folding phone until next year, but it seems that they just introduced that really thin phone. You sit down within your pocket, you now have a folding phone.
You could break it in half.
But
That's
But
why
I'll
it's
tell you-
called liquid glass.
I just got my watch Series 10 from Costco the other day for $329. So
I'm telling you, it's a
get them while they
phenomenal
last.
watch.
It is. I'm
It's
pretty
a
impressed.
phenomenal watch. Phenomenal watch. I mean, the
But-
fact of the matter is it does so much more than tell time.
Yeah.
But I use it, and I'll give you a trick, and then we have to leave. I had so many things I wanted to talk to. I wanted to talk about Lady Gaga. I wanted to talk about the World Cup. I wanted to talk about F1. I have so many stories, but this show just moved on. We've been on the air over an hour and 5 minutes right now, so I'm gonna have to get off the air just because nobody will watch more than an hour unless they, maybe Wayne Sims will, But other than that, forget about that, But the reality is everything you've heard today is an opinion. Do your own research. This was 276 consecutive shows in a row. Pretty impressive, if you ask me. I don't even have underwear that's old. That's all I can say.
Planned obsolescence.
Yeah, planned obsolescence. We'll be here next week, same time, and I'm changing our marketing strategy. You'll all be getting some emails soon from me, and I would love to get your opinion on it. I'm using a company called Dubb now, dubb.com. Don't if anybody's thinking of using it, remember to call me. I'll give you a link so we can all save some money. But you'll see what it is. You'll see what it is very shortly. You make it happen. Have a great week, everybody. And we'll stay in the room and talk. So if you want to join us, you know how to reach us. DM anyone. We'll send you a link. Other than that, have a great week. And remember, you make it happen. So go out and make it happen. And we will see you again next week.